Thank you. Hunter?
So over the past 2 months, I have had the profound honor of standing in solidarity at multiple Black Lives Matter protests all throughout the Commonwealth. From Beacon Hill to Franklin Park in Boston, to Rentham, to Norfolk, to North Attleboro, we are a multi-generational and diverse coalition that has finally said enough is enough. Now, although it was triggered by the murder of George Floyd and the murder of Breonna Taylor, the protests have moved far beyond that to much broader issues of discrimination at all levels. So, as your state representative, one of the key issues I plan to tackle over my tenure is the issue of police brutality and police accountability. The numbers are real, and we know that people of color are subject to far greater discriminatory practices by the police than their white counterparts. So as your state representative, I unequivocally support recent legislation that was passed by the House in the area of police reform, but I believe it doesn't go far in a couple of categories. So number one, in the area of police reform, I would push for the complete ban of tear gas and rubber bullets. These are ineffective crowd control measures that can result in permanent injury from their use. And the use of tear gas even constitutes a war crime. It's madness that we use them against our citizens, and their use needs to be stopped. Number two, I would put an indefinite moratorium on the use of facial recognition software, which disproportionately targets people of color and disproportionately identifies people wrongfully as criminals. And its use is authoritarian and should be stopped indefinitely. And number three, I would go further to challenge the issue of qualified immunity, this legal doctrine that is far too often used as a cudgel to prevent people, and again, disproportionately people of color, from seeking the restitution they deserve when they have been wronged by law enforcement, when they have suffered as a result of police misconduct. So I would pass and support legislation that would challenge the doctrine of qualified immunity and finally bring accountability to the police force and allow people to have their day in court that they have been so long been denied.
All right, thank you. Any rebuttal?
Okay, so in regards for racism, equality that's out there, what we're looking for, we're definitely looking into everything that's going out there for the police departments, everything that's going on. We're looking for the equality for everybody that's out there. Yes, there's bad people that are out there that we see happening all the time. We're going to be looking into the police departments for rearranging their personnel to follow up with everything else, and it's going to be a must. I mean, people have to be answering for what's going on out there. It's not from everybody. God knows we have enough great police departments out there and personnel that are out there. We have some bad apples that we need to change. We need to make those changes for everybody else. Everybody deserves it. Absolutely everybody deserves it, especially the colored communities and anybody that's having the issues out there. There's no reason for them to be living in fear from a police department or anything like that sort of safety whatsoever.
Thank you. All right, next question goes to Hunter first. This is sort of a long technical one.
My favorite.
House Resolution 3208 and Senate Resolution 2163 in the current session would have Massachusetts call for an amendment to the U.S. Constitution to affirm that the rights protected by the Constitution of the United States are the rights of individual human beings only, and money spent to influence elections is not protected free speech and may be regulated to ensure equal access to the political process for all Americans. What is your position on these resolutions? If you support them, would you file or co-sponsor and champion them in the next session?
I unequivocally support the House resolution to limit the disastrous decision of Citizens United that allowed for billions of dollars in dark, unaccounted for money to flood into our political process and poison the well by allowing those who are wealthy to disproportionately influence the political process and block out folks who do not have the money. So I absolutely would support this resolution, and I absolutely would champion it. My campaign, one of our founding principles is on the principle of accountability. And it doesn't get much more accountable than being able to make sure these influences on our democracy, the influences of big business and large money flooding into our political process, is stopped, equalizing the political process and allowing everybody, no matter how wealthy you are or no matter how poor you are, to have an equal say and use their speech equally. So I support this resolution, would champion it, and we need to see a constitutional amendment which would overturn the Citizens United case and finally bring accountability back to our democracy.
Thank you, Hunter. Brian?
That's a good question. This is something that has been going on for a long time, putting the dark money out there. It's definitely something that needs to be addressed. Will I look into it if I get in? Absolutely. The fairness behind our voting is going to be one person, one vote. The fairness behind getting the word out to them has nothing to do with the amount of money that gets spent on something to twist something in the fashion that they want you to believe it in. People have to be able to draw a strong conclusion on their own behalf. They need good readings behind it. They need good information behind it. And if you have dark money out there that's twisting things and making it sound the proper way that they want it to sound, of course they're going to be going in that direction. So they have to put an end to this. It's a must. You can't be burning through money all the time. If they want to burn through money, pass it out to the American public. They'll take it.
All right. Thank you. In rebuttal?
No rebuttal.
All right. All right. So a question from the floor. In 2016, Norfolk 9th Democrats lost the seat by a margin of almost 22%, 5,000 votes. In 2018, we lost the seat by 17.5%. How can you affirm voters you will close this gap and unseat Representative Dooley? Brian?
I had it as closer than that. I'm not sure where the numbers had come from, but it's something where as time has passed by, I keep getting more and more requests in regards for, as I said, asking for money again, looking for more backing. I've had a lot more people. Each time we're getting out there, we're dropping things all the time for our percentages. The different people that are out there, we're raising our notification, our notoriety that's out there. And my ability to work with the public is definitely getting more noticed. And that's the biggest thing that I want to put out in front of everybody is how much that's going to be noticed out there and what I'm looking to do for the country, for our communities, I should say.
All right. Thank you. Hunter?
Yeah, Andrew, those numbers are spot on. The New York Times reported that in their aggregate report of the House and state Senate races in 2016 and 2018. Ballotpedia reported that, and the town election commissions reported that as well. And the way we're going to make up that gap is by running a retail politic campaign. And I have to say, over the last 2 months, I have been humbled and honored to see the dozens of folks who have come out to volunteer for our events, the folks who have come out for our sign holdings in Rentham, Plainville, and Norfolk, the folks who have helped us make dozens of calls to voters across the district, spreading our progressive message. And that's how we're going to win. Our strength comes from, or at least our campaign strength, comes from our multi-generational and diverse coalition that will come together to take us through this primary and into November and into the State House. And that's how we're going to win, and that's how we're going to make up that difference. We haven't seen a campaign like that in 9th Norfolk, and I am excited to bring that enthusiasm and to bring that energy into this race and beyond.
Thank you. Brian, any last comments?
Best I can say is we're working diligently on the same type of thing, getting things out there. Going to do more mailings this time, get the mailings out to the people and make sure they're understanding that things need to change. There's no question they need to change. To vote for me, to work with the rest of the communities, the rest of the representatives that are out there would be a huge benefit for these communities, and they're going to understand this. We will get that word to them.
All right, thank you. This next question goes to Hunter first. Please discuss your top 1 or 2 progressive priorities if you are elected.
So the numbers are in. And the economic fallout from COVID-19 is looking disastrous. We all remember 2008. Even on my street, there were folks who apparently looked like they were doing good, had the newest cars, had pools, had the whole 9 yards. And when the financial crisis hit, they were thrown out onto the street. And we haven't seen them since. I haven't heard from a lot of them since anyways. So for the economic fallout from COVID-19, we are looking at an even worse situation than in 2008. 30% of Massachusetts citizens are looking to be thrown out onto the streets, either foreclosed upon or evicted. So my top priority, as soon as I assume office in January, when we're going to be in the full height of this economic fallout, is to keep the people of our district in their homes. I want the legislature to get landlords and banks around the table so we can negotiate an indefinite moratorium on rents, mortgages, evictions, and foreclosures. We need a drastic response, because if we don't respond now, if we turn folks out onto the streets in our worst public health crisis in history, it's going to be disastrous. So we need to do that. So my top progressive priority will be to keep the folks of our district in their homes.
Thank you. Brian?
I don't disagree with it, Hunter, at all. The first focus we're going to be starting on would be the housing. We need to get this in works, and education. I mean, we're looking at something even quicker that's going to be happening there. They can be starting to address that already before we even have that opportunity to get in there. But that's something that's going to need to get followed up. Between testing and everything else is going to be happening in this up and coming year, the kids are going to need some support in behind everything that's here. So yes, we need to focus on the housing and banking industry. There isn't a question in regards for that. For the landlords, and just follow that up with education. It's going to be our biggest priority for anything to take care of once we get in there.
Thank you. Hunter, any last words?
Nothing more.
All right. Okay, the next question I had was another sort of complex one. House Bill 2775, I guess I shouldn't say complex, it's very specific, would have amended the Massachusetts open meeting law to permit members of public bodies to participate in public internet discussions as long as the public was given the same kind of notice that they are given for meetings, and the public could monitor the public internet discussion as fully as the members of the public body themselves. What is your position on this amendment? If you support it, would you file or co-sponsor and champion it in the next session?
Yes, absolutely. And this is something that the public could feel more involved with. If you lay something like this out in front of the public so they can get involved with it, similar like the Zoom that we're doing now. I mean, you have people that are on board with everything that's going to be happening here. They're able to get out there, pay attention to things, see what they need to see. If it doesn't go into it, it was something that, it's one of the strong things that I want to see is the transparency behind a lot of things out there where they don't take care of things. I want to get the word from the public, get it back in the State House, and return that back to the public so they know what's going on. You open up something like this would be absolutely fantastic for everybody.
Thank you. Hunter?
I absolutely support this amendment. It is far past time that we allow everybody to participate in the politics of Beacon Hill, whether it's attending testimony, attending a committee meeting. It's madness that we haven't done this sooner. You have folks living out in Pittsfield who are 3 hours from Boston who have not been able to fully participate in that process, because again, it's not just closed door meetings. There are dozens of meetings every day happening on Beacon Hill for committee meetings and testimonies being heard. So we need to open that up to everybody, regardless of their locations. It even hits us hard in a suburb like ours, where we're an hour out from the city, and it's difficult to get in and participate in these public meetings. So absolutely, I support opening up these meetings to participation from the internet. And I think all of us can agree with that, as we're all engaged in a town hall over Zoom. It's a no-brainer to me, and I think it's an important step to opening up access to Beacon Hill politics and bringing an important level of accountability to our state government.
Um, Brian, did you have any other comments on that one? You have a chance for rebuttal?
I mean, if we're able to make something like this happen, this is something that would be fantastic. They have the information that's out there. I plan on running office hours in my district, if not once a month on a Friday or a Saturday for the people. It could run to twice a month. It all depends on how things are going to work out as far as questioning. But you throw something like this in front of the people where they're able to sit and hear what's going on, there'll be a lot more questions. There'll be a lot more people who can spend time in the office.
All right, thank you. All right. The next question, how will you protect a woman's right to choose should Roe v. Wade be overturned? I believe it's with Hunter first now.
Women's right to choose has been under attack all over the country, which is why I'm glad to see that in our legislature, there is proposed legislation known as the Roe Act, which would not only codify a woman's right to choose into state law, but make the process as easy as possible. And I would not only unequivocally support that law, I hope that it gets passed in this session. They just extended the session to January. But I would support that bill, and I would support similar bills to make the process as easy as possible. It's madness that we would criminalize something like this, and it's madness that we have a representative who is so willing to attack a woman's right to choose. He recently voted against legislation that allows the police to order protesters away when they're blocking a Planned Parenthood clinic. So we need legislation that makes a woman's right to choose as easy as possible. And as your state legislator, I would support any legislation along those lines.
Brian?
The biggest thing in regards for any of this for groups like Planned Parenthood is the fact that they're getting great information out there for people. So to get something out there like that for people so they understand their full choices that they have, they're able to make for their bodies. I mean, this is for women's lives. This is for the different changes that they're looking to do, things that need to happen for them so they can fully understand their options that they have. Because we're looking to take something like that away from somebody. There's no way anything like that should be happening. They need full support in this, have to stay behind them 100%. They need the protection out there like anybody else, and it doesn't make a difference. There was years ago, they had everything going on with abortions, different things like that because they had money. It was okay. It shouldn't be like that whatsoever. It has nothing to do with the amount of money. It has to do with the care for their body that they need to do, and they know their body better than anybody else. That's the decision they need to make on their own.
Any last comments, Hunter?
Nothing further.
Okay. Again, if there are questions from the audience, feel free to post it in the chat, and I will take them as I see them. Okay, trying to find out where my are. All right. So this is for Brian first, I believe. Please discuss a recent bill that our current state rep voted on and how you would have addressed that bill and why.
I'm sorry to say I don't have anything that he voted on in anything good at this point.
It's fine to disagree with his vote and why you would vote differently.
Yeah, I just, right at the moment, I don't have anything and I should. I'm sorry.
All right, Hunter?
So recently, Sean Dooley voted against the sweeping police reform bill that was passed by both the Senate and the House last week. It's beyond frustrating to see that we currently have a representative that puts so little emphasis on police reform, not only doesn't think it's an issue, does not think that he needs to address it. So I absolutely would have voted in favor of that police reform bill. But at the same time, I don't think that that bill went far enough. So as state representative, I would have proposed several amendments. As I mentioned previously, I would have proposed an amendment that further rolled back qualified immunity and made it so that folks wronged by police misconduct could seek the restitution they deserve. I would also propose an amendment in the House bill. This was proposed in the Senate version of the bill, but not in the House bill, that puts a year-long moratorium on facial recognition with the idea of extending it to long-term once the year is up. And thirdly, I would have voted yes, and Sean Dooley voted against this amendment, on the amendment that banned the use of tear gas and rubber bullets. As I've mentioned, these are weapons of war. Tear gas's use is banned as a war crime by several internationally recognized accords, and rubber bullets have the chance of inflicting permanent injury, a 15% chance of inflicting permanent injury, and a 3% chance of killing somebody outright. These are weapons of war and have no place in our law enforcement. So I would have voted in favor of the amendment that would ban police use of those weapons of war. So that's how I would have addressed that bill.
Thank you. Brian, any last comments?
No, thank you.
All right. We do have a question from the floor. Do you endorse, this is to Hunter first, do you endorse any of the candidates running in the primaries for U.S. Senate or House of Representatives for our district?
So we have some great folks running for the U.S. House of Representatives and the U.S. Senate. In our congressional district, I give my full-throated and complete endorsement of Ihsan Lecky. She has gone through such incredible hardships as an immigrant from Morocco. She was a financial regulator, and she has the most progressive platform in the race. I think she would do great things for our district, and I give her my complete and total endorsement. And I also endorse Senator Ed Markey for re-election. He has been working hard for the past 40 years, has been ahead on almost every single important issue we have faced. He's been ahead on climate change. He's been ahead on nuclear proliferation. He has been ahead on rights that we have online. His support of net neutrality is inspiring. His constant fight to increase our transportation in the Commonwealth and his fight against qualified immunity has been inspiring. And I look forward to seeing him continue to serve us in the years to come.
Thank you. Brian?
I am looking at Joe Kennedy for U.S. Senate. I mean, he's somebody that I firmly believe in. Exceptional person in the aspect that he warmly believes in the American public. He's pushing for things. He has made a lot of things. He's worked on so many things in Congress. He is enthusiastic behind what he does. He is well-versed in what he does. He is well-liked in everything he's doing out there. He's just a great person to get things in and make things change for us.
And for the House of Representatives?
I don't have anybody on that one at this point right now. Sorry.
All right. Thank you. Hunter, any last comments?
Yeah, no, it's just been incredible to see the upspring of youth support for both Ihsan Lecky and Ed Markey. And I just wanted to comment on how incredible it is to see folks my age who have been given to believe that they can make a difference in politics, that they can stand up and support the candidate that they believe in. And it's just been truly inspiring to see that among my generation, that we're ready to step up and lead.
Thank you. Next question is to Brian first. What do you propose to improve public transportation in the district and the surrounding region?
One of the bigger things I've been talking about the last couple of years in regards to things is the contribution that the larger companies can make back to the local communities. A lot of times they're getting tax breaks in there. So what I'd want to see is those larger companies, if they have people coming from different areas, because let's face it, if they're big companies, they're bringing people in, they're coming from different communities. So they should be putting money back into their local communities where their employees are coming from. That would help work out the budgets that are out there. That'll help put in extra money into local towns that are out there. And it's just something I would like to see happen. I want to emphasize in regards for that of the companies that are out there to put the stipends not so much into their local towns where the businesses are, but back to the communities where the people that are actually supporting their companies are from.
Thank you, Brian. Hunter?
Yeah, so as I'm sure many people can attest to in this district, and I can also attest to personally, is that so many people rely on the MBTA to commute into the city. Not so much recently, but globally, that's the case. We are a district of commuters. Every single day when I would commute into Beacon Hill, I'd hop on the T at 7 a.m. And get to work as soon as I got into the city. So what I propose for transportation is threefold. Number one, I unequivocally support increased spending on the MBTA. It has been neglected for far too long, and we need a thorough investment in public transportation. Number two, I propose increasing service hours for the MBTA to once an hour. It's crazy that if you miss a train, it's 2 hours till you get the next one. So it's time that we open up access to public transportation and make it as easy as possible to get into the city. Like I said, we're a district of commuters. So that easy access is crucial for our continued well-being as a district. And thirdly, I would like to look at lowering fare costs and keeping fare costs as low as possible with the long-term goal of making fare on the MBTA free. It's about time that we open up access to transportation to the city and make it as free and open as possible, because any hike in fare is a regressive form of taxation in order to fund the MBTA. It's something that we should be paying for at a state level, and we as citizens should be enjoying the benefits of that investment. So that's the long-term goal.
Thank you. Brian, any last comments?
It's something we need to look into in regards to the MBTA, is to follow up on their excess of spending, their downturn that's out there all the time that they keep saying they're working on. We need more answers as to what they're working on. Are they just looking at things? Are they going to make something happen here? We need to make the changes there on that behalf. We need something more dependable from the MBTA, because what's out there right now is not. Even in the down times we're looking at right now, for the lack of things that are going on, we're still not making any improvements. There's nothing going on.
Okay, thank you. This next question goes to Brian first, I believe. House Bill 2719 in the current session and House Bill 1685 and Senate Bill 1689 in the previous session would require that anyone bidding on a state contract for $10,000 or more must certify that they are in compliance with the Massachusetts anti-discrimination laws and will not refuse, fail, or cease to do business with any other person when that action is based upon such other person's race, color, creed, religion, sex, etc. Those bills failed, I believe, because there was lobbying to allow a contractor to accept more than $10,000 of taxpayers' money and still discriminate against Israeli businesses. What is your position on this anti-discrimination legislation? If you support it, would you file or co-sponsor and champion it in the next session?
Absolutely. Biggest thing they need to do is they need to get more accountability, again, behind their performance. They can come in at a low-end contracting, but you need a job that's going to be done and done properly, safely. Workers, you'd have to watch out for the workers. You need to get the job done that's supposed to be done out there. It has nothing to do with the people that are out there, because they don't want to work with different companies, different things like that. After something comes along and makes a change somewhere along the line, they have a contract. They have to abide by that contract. Doesn't matter who they're going to be working with. Somebody else make change. There's changes all the time in the workforce. They have to do something in regards for that. They have to keep working. They have to continue that contract in a proper manner. There's no reason that they can't do that.
Thank you. Hunter?
Hate has absolutely no home in Massachusetts. Speaking on the discrimination against Israeli companies, although I personally am not Jewish, my last name is an extraordinarily, is a traditionally Jewish last name. And my father faced many anti-Semitic attacks at his high school in Islip, New York, and his Jewish classmates were terrorized extremely. So hate has absolutely no home in Massachusetts. So I would love to speak with the co-sponsor, the current leading sponsor on that bill, and see if we can push to get that through.
Thank you. Brian, any last comments?
No.
Okay. Question from the floor from Andrew. For the past decade, the cost to attend a Massachusetts university has surged immensely. What legislation would you support to make it more affordable for people of the Commonwealth to seek higher education? So Hunter, this is to you first.
College affordability is a problem that's hit my family pretty directly. When my sister was attempting to gain a higher education, the people at the financial aid office looked my family in the eye and said, well, you can always take out a second mortgage on your house to pay for it. So the fact that college tuition prices are skyrocketing is unacceptable. Every student I have met, and I am also an attendee of a University of Massachusetts university, every single student I've met as part of the UMass system is a hardworking citizen who deserves a free education. So that's why, as your state legislator, I would co-sponsor an act relative to establishing tuition-free college in the Commonwealth. The argument is not only a moral one, that everyone should have access to a public education regardless of income, it's also a practical one. As it stands, right now, Massachusetts only funds, I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but according to the Department of Education, less than 30% of the operating costs of UMass. And that leads to a lot of issues. It leads to budgeting instability. As the university, year to year, has no clear view of how it's going to be able to cover its operating costs. So I support passing an act relative to establishing tuition-free college in the Commonwealth to end that budget instability and give the education that the citizens of the Commonwealth deserve. We're trailblazers on education ever since the time of Horace Mann, and I think it's time we lead on education again.
Thank you, Hunter. Brian?
The biggest thing is going to be how to financially support it, how we're able to do all this. We can look into doing whatever we want to in regards for making our payments and everything else. I was one that took out, not a second mortgage, but definitely took out some loans out there in order to pay for my kids' educations that are out there. Did I agree with it at that time? No. Did they get a great education? Absolutely. Is there something different that we can do about it? Definitely have to look into it. These things are actually skyrocketing, as we were saying, Hunter was saying before. It's astronomical what you have to look at, what the kids have to make coming out of a college afterwards. The jobs are getting far and fewer between. They're graduating more all the time. They're getting less to turn things around afterwards. They need some sort of sustainability out there, so we have to help them out with their college education. We need to work on getting those costs down.
Thank you. Hunter, any final comments?
Yeah, just to cap it off, right now, due to COVID, the UMass system is in a period of crisis. There's a lot of, there's a potential that the system might become insolvent. So we need to fund it at 100% again, not just to provide equal opportunity and education to everyone in the Commonwealth, but to really save our university and end that budget instability that it has been grappling with for decades. And the only way we do that is by funding it at 100%. And the happy consequence of doing that is that everyone, regardless of their background, regardless of their income, are able to receive the education that they deserve.
All right, thank you. Brian, this one's to you first. What political figure do you idolize and why?
John F. Kennedy. John F. Kennedy is somebody that I look forward to. I mean, he was one that pushed for higher limits all the time. Biggest saying that he had that always comes to my mind is not what my country can do for me, but what can I do for my country? And that was something that I heard. I mean, he passed when I was in 63. I was born in 62. I heard it in recordings afterwards, and it's something that has stuck in my mind. That's what's putting me in the position that I'm in right now. I run a family business. I'll be not walking away from that, but definitely parting from that in an aspect to do something I'm looking to do here that I believe in. This is something I want to do for my community. This is something I want to do for the people around me and for my kids and my grandchildren coming along. This is something I want to see happen. I want to make changes in the government. I want to make sure things happen for them so they have a better life to come to, similar to what I've lived in.
Thank you. Hunter?
Without a doubt, it's Franklin Roosevelt. Let me tell you a little story. 10 years ago, when I was 9 years old, I was heavily involved in the Rentham Public School drama program. And we rehearsed and performed in the Vogel Auditorium in the Vogel School. That school only exists because Franklin Roosevelt, in our nation's darkest time, when our country was facing economic disaster and potential collapse, chose to invest in infrastructure, to invest in the utilities that would allow schools like the Vogel and all over Massachusetts and all over the country to exist. He is a man who, in our nation's darkest time, gave us hope. He taught a nation so thoroughly destroyed by right-wing policies how to hope again. And looking forward at our times now, we're in the same situation nearly 100 years later. So whenever I look for inspiration in politics, I look to that man who, in our darkest hour, helped us and saved our nation.
Thank you. Brian, any last comments?
No, nope, thank you.
Okay. Again, if you have a question from the audience, feel free to type it into the chat. I believe this is the last of the prepared questions. And this is to Hunter first. If elected, what would you do about your commitments to your business or schooling? In order to concentrate on your duties as a state rep, would you turn your business over to someone else or drop out of school, or do you try to function as a state rep while still working in your business or taking classes?
So this was the first question I asked myself when considering this run. So I took a lot of time. I spoke to folks who had balanced a full-time job while pursuing their education. And I've seen our constituents, many of our constituents, pursuing their higher education while working a full-time job. And that's exactly what I plan to do. I'm a history student at UMass. I'm nearing my degree. So the plan is to do night classes for a year into my term. And at that point, I will graduate and be able to put my full energy into this job. And I'll be putting my full energy into this job for the full term. You know, it'll definitely be difficult to balance both, but I am certain that I can give this my full attention. It's a 9-to-5 job. That's one thing I learned as an intern. You got to be putting in the hours for it on Beacon Hill. So I fully intend to have this be my primary focus while also pursuing night school like many of our constituents do.
Thank you. Brian?
I will, as I said before, I run a family business. We've been in Norfolk here now for 56 years. And I've been the last 2 years focusing on the fact of training somebody else to be running my business while I am not here, while I am in the State House, because it's something that I definitely was taken away from the time frame that I had to spend on it, for the people to reassure the people that I had the time and focus that I had for their community services. I want to be here for the people. I have somebody that's going to be taking over my business behind me. I'm bringing on more staff that have been training at the same time now to get things set up and everything for our victory in November. And it's just something I want to focus on and keep things moving that way. I will have time to work nights with constituents. I'll have time to go to town meetings, different school board meetings, anything like that during the night. So we have everything during the day that'll be in the State House. Check on my business early in the morning before coming, make sure everything's all set for that, and then do night meetings and everything else after that. From school board meetings to town meetings, anything like that that people are going to be looking to do. I want to stay a full focus on my communities.
And thank you. Hunter, any last comments?
Nothing further.
Okay. That's interesting. Okay, so 2 other questions from the floor. Do you believe that the inalienable rights in the U.S. Constitution are the rights only of individual living human beings, or are they also the rights of artificial entities such as corporations, companies, unions, etc.? And this is to Brian first.
They are to the American public, not necessarily into the entities of corporations, but to the American individuals is what they're there to protect. They're not there to protect the companies that are out there. They're not there to take care of the corporations. They're there to protect the American individual people. That's what it's all about.
Thank you. Hunter?
Corporations are not people. Perhaps the worst thing to come out of the Citizens United decision was the designation of organized entities like corporations, that they had the same rights to free speech as people. They don't. A corporation is not a person. And again, that's why I support the previous legislation mentioned that would establish a constitutional amendment to overturn that disastrous decision. And well, as to the question if artificially intelligent systems or robots have access to the same constitutional rights as you or I think that question might be better suited to a philosopher. I'm only a history major, but you know, I think I'm sure there's plenty of writing about that. But I must confess, I don't have the wherewithal or the knowledge to try and answer that deeply philosophical question. But I do appreciate you for posing it.
Brian, any last comments?
No, thank you.
Okay. This question, it says in the chat, is from me. It's actually from my better half, my wife. How can each of the candidates reach out to voters who have elected Sean Dooley? Why would they want to vote for you when they have previously supported the Republican candidate? So this goes to Hunter first.
I think I would invite them to take a look at the current situation. As I said, we are facing an economic crisis on a scale that we have never seen before. And I would ask them to ask the question, do you think Sean Dooley, who has repeatedly opposed legislation that could alleviate crises like this in the past, do they think that a man who believes that we shouldn't invest in mass health should lead us in a time of economic disaster? Do they believe that a man who believes that prisoners should be able to use, that corporations and entities should be able to use prison labor as much as possible when he voted against a measure to limit prison labor, is best suited to have the moral character and the clarity to address a disaster of this scale? Because again, no matter who enters that office in January, it will be in the midst of one of, if not the worst financial crises in our nation's history. So I would ask them, do they think that he would be able to navigate those waters? Or do we go with someone new? Someone proposing bold, progressive solutions to our problems. Someone who will fight for their rights to stay in their house, regardless of their income during this crisis. Someone who would push for universal vaccines for everybody at no cost. So I would ask them, who do they think is best suited to lead in this crisis?
Thank you. Brian?
Part of when I'm speaking in regards to this, I have, in the last few years, I keep getting more and more requests of supporters of Sean Dooley's that are asking if I am still running against him because they're tired of what they see happen. Similar to what's being said, he doesn't speak in the same terms that he votes by. So the people are not getting there. They feel deceived out there all the time. So when we're talking about things, you have to reassure the people of what's going on, what they're being discussed with you at that time is something that's going to be heard, something you're going to believe in with them. And that's one of the biggest things when you start looking somebody in the eye and having those conversations with them, you better build back up the words that you're going to be telling them. They don't see that from our opponent. And I'll say our opponent because that's what either one of us will be looking at. He's somebody that doesn't lead as well as they should be leading our communities out there. He's not somebody that believes in saying what the people need to hear, what the people have to hear, and not necessarily willing, from what I understand, to work with the people to make things happen for them. The community around here deserves better attention than what they've been getting. They need solid attention than what they've been getting. And they know they need a change.
Thank you, Brian. Hunter, any last words?
Yeah, Sean Dooley is a dangerous right-wing extremist. He's a Trump Republican and he needs to be stopped. And the way we're going to stop him is by giving a clear progressive alternative, making the difference between who is running against him and himself as clear as possible, because he benefits when he is able to pass off as a moderate and convince people that he's middle of the road. And the only way we counter that is by leading with our values as Democrats, not waffling and fighting for what we believe in as Democrats. And that's how we're going to beat him, by drawing a clear difference, giving the voters a clear choice. And that's how I believe we're going to unseat him and bring good leadership to our district.
Thank you, Hunter. Another question from the floor. How would each of you vote on the two confirmed ballot questions? Question 1 is the right to repair. And question 2 would enact a ranked choice voting system for Massachusetts elections. Brian?
Both of them are a yes for me. The right to repair is something, I mean, you need to support your local businesses. If you're not going to give your local business the ability to have that same option to give you the same service that you're going to get at the larger dealerships, they've spent money on all kinds of equipment that's out there. They need to keep spending it. They need that offer from the larger companies to make those same changes to you. There isn't any reason they shouldn't be able to work on the cars. There is no reason whatsoever in regards for that. The second part is something, the ranked voting, I believe in. It's something that would work out fantastic for the groups that are out there. Obviously, we have smaller communities and probably won't see as much happening with it, but it's definitely something that would be bettering the public to have something like that happen in our communities.
Thank you. Hunter?
Well, I'm going to have to disagree just a little bit with that last statement, as in our current congressional primary, there are around a dozen candidates. It seems to be growing every single day. But we are absolutely facing a race where whoever wins is just going to be squeaking by with probably about 13% of the vote. So the danger of first past the post voting, which is the practice of whoever wins the most vote, doesn't necessarily need to be the person who most people would agree on, but the person who physically receives the most votes gets into office, is very present to our current situation this year. So if we had ranked choice voting, that disaster where the person who represents us in Congress is only going to be doing so with 13% of the vote in the primary would be alleviated. So yes, ranked choice voting is a no-brainer. It's affecting us right now, and its presence would be a boon to extending democracy and perfecting our democratic system as much as possible. And as with right to repair, it's, again, the people standing up to these corporations who are trying to put in these softwares and systems that your local mechanics can't work on in order to make more money, and saying, hold on, you can't do that. So I absolutely support the right to repair. You know, it's with these two ballot questions, it is clearly the people standing up, demanding their democracy to be fair and open, and demanding that corporations no longer be allowed to tyrannize them. So both questions are a slam dunk, and I plan to vote yes on both of them.
I'm good. Thanks, Rob.
I think this is one last final question because we're almost at time. This is, how are you going to ensure our schools are safe from gun violence? How is your position different from Representative Dooley's? And this goes to Hunter first, I believe.
So Representative Dooley's current policy, I mean, if you can even really call it that, on gun violence is a program that would empower teachers to treat gun wounds instead of pursuing gun control that would prevent these injuries from happening in the first place. Dooley would have our teachers become combat medics instead of actually addressing the issue. He has links to pro-gun groups. He is one of the most pro-gun members of the legislature, and his voting record very clearly reflects that. So in order to crack down on the horrible tide of gun violence, and fortunately in Massachusetts, we have pretty decent gun control laws, and we've managed to avoid much of those crises, we are still vulnerable. So as your state representative, I would like to see a crackdown on guns entering the states, because no matter how powerful and robust our gun control laws are, we are only as safe as the weakest gun control laws in the states surrounding us. So that's a huge concern. And I'd like to crack down on the importation of firearms from other states, because your Maines and your New Hampshires and your Vermonts have much laxer gun laws than us. So that's how we make sure our schools stay safe. So instead of taking Dooley's stance, which again is reckless and would have our teachers become combat medics, we take proactive measures to stop this epidemic and make sure it does not invade our state.
Thank you. Brian?
Massachusetts definitely has some tough gun laws, and they're great in the aspect that they are trying to take control of the legal guns. The biggest thing we have to focus on is the illegal guns that are out there, and they are coming in from all over. They're coming in from the different states all over. We need to be able to focus on that in the aspect of what's going on with it. Representative Dooley definitely has a strong hold for the NRA and everybody. I want to work with them and come up with different rules, different regulations that will work for gun owners, respectful on gun owners. There's nothing wrong with people who do hunting and things like that. Bank robbers and that, yeah, that's something completely different. But you have people that have done generations of hunting, sharing, and that's as different as it sounds. That's the life that they want to do. You have people that do fishing, you have people that do golfing, you have people that do hunting. That's what they believe in. That's what they want to do. We need to definitely make a better stance in regards for securing our school systems and any public buildings in the area, whether it be movie theaters, anything like that. We need to do the same thing. We need to work for more safety on those. That's a must.
Thank you. Hunter, short response?
I'd just like to finish on saying that our representative has never led on gun control, never will lead, and we need a representative who's willing to have a robust response to gun violence with a plan in order to stem it. And I have that plan, and I'd like to enact that in the House of Representatives in Massachusetts.
Okay. There's one final question from the floor, and then we will go to closing statements. Hunter first, and then finish up with Brian. So the last question from the floor is, in addition to looking at ranked choice voting, have you looked at approval voting or score voting? If so, what is your position on them?
Well, I haven't looked at those specific examples of voting. I'm very fascinated. I'm very fascinated by a lot of the research that political...
Hunter, I think this goes to Brian first, doesn't it?
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, that's why I was interrupting you. Sorry.
My bad. Sorry about that.
Brian, please go.
What was the question again, please?
It was, in addition to looking at ranked choice voting, have you looked at approval voting or score voting? If so, what is your position on them?
I really haven't looked in regards for either one of them. The approval voting seems to have a better ground in behind it. The ranked voting is the one that seems to come up all the time, and that's what I've been focusing on the most.
Thank you. All right, Hunter, your answer?
Yeah, well, so while I'm not familiar with those methods of voting, it definitely has been interesting to see what political scientists have been writing about democratic theory and how better to make our democracy perfect, because we all agree that first past the post, the system we use right now is ineffective and does not represent usually the majority will of the people. So it's really heartening to see these advances in democracy, because democracy in a way is a science. Ensuring how we make the majority of the people have their voice be what is enacted in government is really a process that's constantly evolving. So while I do support ranked choice voting, I think we need to be experimenting with our democracy, listening to these political scientists. There's a lot of promising theories that they're presenting, multi-member districts, which would make representative bodies more democratic. So I support experimentations in democracy always, in order to make the will of the people heard and the government accountable.
Thank you. Brian, last words?
I mean, what's going to happen is we need to follow up with more consistency of what's going to happen out there for the voting system. We're going to find something that's going to work for us. As everybody knows, majority's not working all the time here now. It doesn't work that way. It's not been set up that way. So we need to set on that, get some goals set up there, and start focusing on more of the observations that are out there. and start listening to these people that are out there and telling us something different. We need to look, we need to broaden our horizons and make the changes that we need to for American public.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we're at 8 o'clock, so we'll do the closing statement. So Hunter will go first with his 2 minutes, and then Brian will wrap up with the final 2-minute closing statements. And I'd like to say thank you to all our attendees after that. So Hunter, please start your 2-minute closing statement.
I'd like to start by thanking the many dozens of volunteers who have come out to help our campaign so far. I quite literally would not be here without you, and your support is going to be essential to winning this primary and moving on to the general election and unseating Sean Dooley. But this campaign is prepared to go to the general election. We have raised thousands of dollars. We have made dozens of phone calls to constituents in the district. We have held sign holdouts to get our name out there, to communicate good policy to the people of 9th Norfolk. And if elected as your state representative, I will push for good progressive reform to bring accountability to our democracy and make sure that everybody, no matter their income, background, or anything, has access to the same opportunities that everyone in our Commonwealth has. When we get to November, we're going to need to give the people of 9th Norfolk a clear choice. I don't believe that a middle-of-the-road centrist is the clear choice. I think we need a progressive to go to the general election in November, a progressive to make a clear difference between us as Democrats and Sean Dooley, and a progressive to deliver a victory in November and unseat the most anti-labor representative in the Commonwealth, the most anti-LGBTQ plus member of the House of Representatives in the Commonwealth. And I think I am the one to do that. So my name is Hunter Cohen. And as always, I ask for your vote in the September 1st Democratic primary, and I ask for your vote in the November 3rd general election. Thank you.
Thank you. Brian?
First, I'll start with thanking the Norfolk Democratic Committee for having us on tonight. I'll also go in to step forward and say thank you to all my participants that have been helping out with everything for my election, and will be continuing for pushing things along here for the primary coming up and continuing further. We need to make changes here. I'm looking at backing from different union divisions and everything else that are on board that need to see the changes. They're looking at safety issues that are not getting backed by their representative. They want to see those things happen. I've discussed things with them. I want to make sure they're looking at safety for employees that are out there. We're looking for better incomes for employees that are out there. We're looking for better education for the children that are out there. We need to make these changes out here, and we need people that are going to be pushing for it, for our public, for our kids, for our grandchildren, for everybody that's going to be coming along. That's what we're looking for. That's what this country needs around here. Our communities need all this. Our communities are second to none as far as I'm concerned. I grew up in Norfolk. I live in Plainville now. I've been here my whole life. I plan on staying here my whole life. I had a great education go through Norfolk and King Philip High School. My kids can do the same thing. We have a great program running around here. We want to keep emphasizing that. We want to keep pushing to make the changes there that we need to. If we get in, we start pushing for education laws that are out there for the children. I want to make sure they happen for King Philip. I want to make sure they happen in other districts in the area. We have the charter school in Foxborough, same type of thing. We need to make these things happen for our children. We want them all to happen. They're looking at a battle all the time where I don't feel as though our representative that's out there at the moment has any sort of good connection with the group that he's working with. He's more like a wedge than he is a handout to find out what's going on with things. How can we work together? How can we make these changes? I've been working in kitchen business for over 40 years now at this point. You want to find some pressure, take a kitchen away from a family and see what happens. We have, and I have the ability to work with people, to make things happen out there, to discuss things, make changes, alter with them, listen to them, see what they want to make for a change. They can change my mind, I can change their mind. That's what it's all about. We need somebody that's going to be reaching on both sides, make things happen, talk to the people, and get back to them to let them know what's going to happen to it. My name is Brian Hamlin. I'm asking you for your vote September 1st, November 3rd. Any questions in any regards for anything else, I can be reached at brianhamlin4rep.com. And my email is going to be hamlin4rep, being the number 4, @gmail.com. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate everything. Thank you all.
Thank you, Brian. And I'd like to extend a great thank you to Hunter and Brian for agreeing to join this and present their views to everyone. And I would like to thank the audience for coming and all the questions that were submitted. I really appreciate this, and I think it's given us a great insight into each candidate, and hopefully will help inform our decision on September 1st and help us inform decisions of our neighbors and friends as well. Please, again, accept my thanks. And again, if you're interested in democratic politics in Norfolk, please reach out to John Bowman or myself of the Norfolk Democratic Town Committee. We'd love to have more members, but thank you again for your participation tonight, Hunter, Brian, and everyone in attendance.
Thanks so much, Robert.
Thank you.
Have a good evening, everyone.
Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Everybody. Enjoy. Thank you.